Episode 29 of the New England Sports Media Podcast. We have the professor, Michael Holley, also the author of many books, including the recent Celtics book, The Big Three, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and the rebirth of the Boston Celtics, host of Brother from Another, and I would say the most accessible professor we had in our BU tenure. Michael Holley, thank you so much for joining us on our podcast.
Oh, happy to be here, fellas. My guys, you know.
And I forgot in the introduction, I should have mentioned the purveyor of the best final assignment in college history.
No question.
I got to tell you, you guys, I'm glad you started there. First of all, congratulations on the podcast. And you said episode 29. That really surprised me. My goodness.
It's pretty crazy. We're getting up there, I guess.
You guys are putting the work in. But that you got to tell people about this assignment. Now, I'll tell it from my perspective.
Go for it.
And you guys tell me what you're thinking, I'm thinking, as I'm asking you this question. So tell your audience, this is what happened. We're in a class, it's a sports journalism class. And the interesting thing is, it's mostly, you have some grad students in there, juniors and seniors. But my guys in the class, Greg, Liam, you guys are really the stars. You really were the stars of the class. And I know some of your classmates are going to be listening, like, hey, what about me? It was a great class. I'll say that. And it was the first class I ever taught. So you guys really carried me. I thought it was you spoiled me in a way because, man, this is great. This is good. I feel good. Like every class is not like that. Like everybody in the class was bringing it. So I thought that was just the norm. That is not the norm. So my first class I ever taught was exceptional. But my final assignment, there was this old article in Esquire, 1960 something, 66, whatever, where Gay Talese was writing about Frank Sinatra. It's a famous story in journalism. The story is called Frank Sinatra Has a Cold. And Gay Talese was scheduled to talk with Sinatra, do this profile, but Sinatra didn't want to talk to him. And he did this profile anyway. He talked to all these people who were connected to Sinatra, including his toupee person. I didn't know Sinatra had a toupee person, but they talked about it. And his parents, like Sinatra's parents talked to him like, wait a minute, how do you talk to the guy's parents and he still won't talk to you? So he went back to his house in New Jersey. It was an incredible piece. But what struck me is that he did this great piece without talking to Sinatra himself. Right. And so the assignment, well, I didn't tell you guys what the assignment was. I just had it in the back of my mind.
You're on the chalkboard and you go, name two people that you'd want to, like,
I said two people. Two people you want to talk to. It doesn't matter who they are, no matter how famous they are, two people connected to sports in some way. Who would you talk to? Who would you want to talk to? And so I didn't tell them why. Everybody kind of gave their names. So Greg says his people, Liam says his people, all the way through the class. I write down two. Then when I get to the end of the list, I said, okay, now pick one of these two, and that's the person you're going to write a profile on. So when I said that, what did you guys think? Like, what went through your mind when I said, okay, you're up?
Kind of like a, uh-oh.
Yeah, I had no idea. At first,
I will say I remember distinctly being very excited about it because it was a good challenge. And I remember I chose Scott Boras, who I thought in my convoluted mind I would actually get to interview. And I did. I was close. I didn't. But I think we all know there was someone who did reach their source very impressively.
Yeah, someone pretty good too.
Yeah, Ryan, talking about Ryan.
Brian Cashman.
He wanted to, he's a Red Sox fan, Ryan is, and he wanted to talk to Brian Cashman. And so Brian Cashman, like what impresses me that Brian Cashman called him back twice. Because first it was like, hey, he left a message. He was trying to contact him, didn't get him. He saw that he missed the call. And then Cashman called back. Then after the conversation, Cashman was like, hey, if you need anything, here's my email, here's my number. And as I told Ryan, oh, you need something. That you need something. Just be in conversation with Brian Cashman. That's a good source to have. So shout out Brian Cashman for helping out. We call it the 514. BU Sports Journalism, JO 514. So and Liam had Gilbert Arenas.
My guy. Great memory.
Twitter. You were on Twitter, just kind of shouting out some of his teammates. Yeah. And they got back to you.
Yeah. No, that project was just a great lesson in trying to track down people and using every resource that we had to get quotes and to get people on the
Boris's teammates from Pacific University in 1992 or whatever.
Yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah, I remember that you let me hear one of those recorded interviews you did with one of his teammates who was driving.
Yeah.
And that was a nice conversation, like 40 minutes or something. And then you talked to one of his clients.
Yep. Matt Laporta. He's a real estate agent now. He played for the Indians.
He's a real estate agent now?
In Florida, yeah. I talked to another one too, Ryan Spielborgs, who's hosts a show on XM radio.
Wow.
So, Professor Holley, we want to, and I told you that a couple weeks ago. I'm calling you that in perpetuity.
But I told you, see, okay, now this is controversial because when I'm in a classroom, when I first started teaching, I was really uncomfortable with the professor thing. I was uncomfortable with it. I was just like, call me Michael. I mean, Yeah. And so, but then I was thinking, all right, that may send the wrong message to somebody. So I started going by professor. And so in the classroom, but one of the and I'm not gonna say any names, but there were a couple of students who just couldn't get past the Michael thing. So I said to one student that I'm going to go by this. This is going to be the rule I go by. I said, look, when we're working in the sports media together, you can call me Michael. But as long as we're in the classroom, just call me Professor Huff.
For sure.
And he was cool. He said, all right, I get it. So you can call me. It's up to you. You don't have to call me Professor
Holley. It's it's different,
We're colleagues now.
Not everyone's calling you that in your everyday life,
Yeah. It rolls off the tongue too.
It rolls off the tongue. So here's what we want to talk about with you, okay?
All right.
I know obviously you're a great interviewer, great reporter, great journalist, but we want to tap in a little bit about how you schedule your time, how you do what you do, how one is able to dip their toes into a lot of things and do it so successfully. Writing a book, being a professor, being on TV, appearing on this, appearing on that, and you have a family, obviously kids in school, young kids. I kind of want to guide I kind of want to see where your mind goes on that topic, and then we can bounce questions off you from there. But
yeah,
how do you do it?
Yeah, I think there are two things you really have to do. I think the first thing, and this is a struggle, but I'm getting better at it. First thing is you got to be able to say no. Certain things you just can't do. And some people will understand, some people won't, but you know what your schedule is, and you know how not only it's not just doing the thing, it's the preparation for that thing that's going to take the time. In a lot of cases. So sometimes you just have to say no and know that, all right, that's all right. And the other thing is you have to be really intentional about what you're doing and when you're doing it. So here's an example. Right now I'm working on, I just finished a book project, as you guys know. I'm working on another project right now. So what I'll do is I have writing time for that, whether I feel like it or not, whether the writing is flowing or not. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. It's not a great writing day, but you have to put that work in at that certain time. And then I have a certain time for just make I will sit, and we call it dreaming time with my wife. I'll sit with my wife at a certain time. We'll have coffee, we'll dream, we'll have our conversations. Then I'll get back to work. Then there's preparation for Brother from Another. And then when that's done, that's got to be done. Okay, I'm done with that. Then I'm going to see the kids because I'm over my garage right now. That's the other thing. You got to be able to get yourself a space where you can actually get work done. So I know I can get work done here without any kind of distractions. And it's amazing how much you can get done if you just set a schedule and focus on it. Like believe me, I can make all sorts of excuses. I'm a good excuse maker. So last night, I was about to give myself, just a perfect example. I was going to give myself an excuse. I was supposed to write, here's another rule. I got another rule here. So there's a certain time for doing things. No matter what, I will not do anything after 3 a.m. That's my cutoff, 3 a.m. I'm not writing after 3 o'clock. I could be wide awake. I'm not writing after 3 a.m. because it's just diminishing returns. Shortly after 3:05, it's going to be terrible. One. Then two, you got to sleep. You got to force yourself to go to sleep because you're just going to wear down. But last night was supposed to be one of my windows, say from like 11 to 1:30, 2 o'clock, writing time. So yeah, but Ohio State, grew up there. Ohio State's in the national championship game. I have to watch this. Then I turned it on. I saw the score. I said, thank you, Ohio State, for allowing me to get back. I don't have to watch this. It's a waste of time. So you just really have to be specific about what you want to get done. So right now, as you fellas know, I'm on sabbatical. Now I'm not on sabbatical because Brother from Another. I'm on sabbatical because of this book project, but Brother from Another popped up. There's only so much you can do. Right. And teaching is probably the hardest one. When you ask that question of all those things, doing some TV here and doing some writing here, fine. But teaching is a monster, fellas. Because there's the teaching aspect, which is a blast. Then there's the mentoring aspect, like the office hours. Then there's grading. Then there's letters of recommendation, all sorts of things. That's a job that does not stop. You can't do that with teaching. You can't say, nope, I'm not available. Like if Greg Levinsky needs me, if Liam O'Brien needs me at 11:15, I gotta help. I gotta help. I just can't say, well,
that's why you're the best professor out there.
Like I can't say, well, he knows my office hours. No, I gotta help.
Right. So I'm wondering, when you're doing these writing hours, these book hours, when you're in the process of doing the book, I mean, I know I helped you out a little bit. I mean,
a lot. You helped me out a lot.
It was very small. It was very small research.
Ace researcher.
So, hey, Liam's got it. Let's go.
There it is.
What percentage? Like, how does it come together? Do you need the research done first? Are you doing researching and writing? Like when you're writing a book, especially a book where it's not like an autobiography and you're helping like the more book like you just did, how does that process work? Like, are you doing all the interviews first, then writing? Are you doing stuff as you go? Are you seeing where stuff fits? Like, what's the process look like?
You know what? That's a great question, Greg. And I got to say, that's changed a bit. It changed with this particular book here, because I think I've always done outlines. And sometimes I follow the outline, sometimes I don't. I mean, I don't follow the outline to the letter, but I think an outline, I'm talking about a real substantive, we're talking about a thick outline, not the outline that you learn to do in 4th grade at Mason Rice, Liam. Hey, Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3.
Pretty good outline though.
And it's probably like, the whole thing is like 2 pages, maybe, and, you got a couple sentences on there. But I think an outline includes research. And you should really get in there and dig on your outline to figure out what the story is. And sometimes during the outline, you think the story is one thing, but you might get to page 12 or 13 of your outline, and you've got all these things together, and you step back and go, well, wait a minute. That's the story. It's not like the story is really this little gem inside of the larger story. Now you figure that out. Now, what I did with this is crazy. Okay, I'm going to tell you something. What I did with the big three, I had never done before with the book. Not only did I write a pretty aggressive outline with this book, I wrote it. I said, okay, let me see what I know. Without talking to anybody, let me see what I know or what I think I know. So I wrote the whole book, start to finish, just based on what I thought I knew, what I knew. I said, I gotta get that rough. That's a rough draft.
Just for reference, like how many pages would that have been? Just off of what you know.
300.
Whoa.
Just like, okay, 2008, 2010, before the big three got there, Danny coming in, Doc coming in, new ownership, all these things, the trades, and all that. So clearly, when you get through that, now I would never publish that. I would never even think about publishing that. But I needed to get that out just to get a feel for where we were going. So now that I've got that rough draft out, I see there are about 15 holes in there. There are holes in my knowledge. Like there's some things I think I know, but I don't quite know well enough. And I make a mark on that. I'm like, okay, I need to figure out this. There are some things that I was convinced I knew, but once I went and interviewed people again, I got it wrong. So then I cleaned that up. And after a rough draft, now you can go back, you got a better sense of the story, and now you're conversant in your own work. I just feel like you have to know your work better before you really have to know it well if you're going to attempt to tell a story.
And how'd you know?
I've never written a book like that before. So I did the rough draft, went back, did additional reporting, interviewing, and then came back and wrote the book again.
With the big three too, there's a million different ways you can probably start a book like that. Like, how would you pick that anecdote that you went with?
Well, you mean in the prologue or chapter one?
Chapter one.
Okay, well, Wick going up to to buy the Celtics, because
Yeah.
I feel like the best way to start most of the time. I don't like to be hard and fast on like here's the rule. I don't think like that. But in most cases, in a story like this, I think it's best to start at the beginning because people don't get lost. If I start in, hey, here's Danny Ainge making a trade in 2007. Then I jump back to 2002, 2003. Then I jump back. Like it's too messy. And I think people can do that. A lot of people can do that. But it's a very fine pass to go through to get that just right. I just want to keep people moving along. And the other thing with this one, I want people to feel the frustration. I want you to know that because that's what I figured out with the rough draft. I didn't start the rough draft that way, Liam. I didn't start the rough draft with the Wick story. The rough draft, I think, started with Pierce. And I'm telling you about Pierce's frustration, but I don't think I was doing a good job of showing you his frustration. And his story. And when I started with Pierce, frustrated Pierce, Antoine was gone. So now we're already in 2003. But a big part of Pierce's story, as you know, was 2000 and the stabbing. And so in that case, chronologically, the book starts in 2002, Wick going to get the team from Gaston. It goes up. I'm up to 2005 with Pierce in Indiana acting crazy, you know, saying he broke his jaw when he didn't and taking his shirt off. But now here's the point. Perfect. The shirt's off. Everybody's down on Paul Pierce. They're saying he's immature. He's not a Celtic. And they point to that scene with him with his shirt off. But what they're looking at the actions, but what they're not looking at is a tattoo on his back and the scars. Where are those scars from? Ooh, that allows me to go back to 2000, just take a bit back and get into that. Now I'm going to bring you up to the present. You understand Paul Pierce a little bit better now. Now it's not easy to turn him into this cliche, typical mercenary athlete who just is entitled. No, he's not entitled. This is a guy who was almost killed in a club in Boston, and he didn't ask to be traded, and he played 82 games after being stabbed. And now he's just acting out of basketball frustration, but he loves the Celtics and he's just trying to figure out how to win. And I think to get all of that, you got to start at a certain place and just kind of build up to it. And then once you start building, then that train will run on its own.
So I'm wondering, in terms of the book process, your reporting process, you talking to people that you know, you've written on the Patriots, you've written on the Red Sox, you've written on the Celtics. I know that you're in tune with probably a lot of people all the time, but you're not necessarily reporting on them every day publicly in that instance. How are you keeping kind of tabs on stuff and getting a pulse for things when you can kind of launch a project like this? Like, how do you know when's the time, and how are you making sure that you're keeping kind of your pulse and these people know that you're still there and still interested, even when you're not every day writing about them or talking about them?
Yeah. Well, your question about how do you know? It's those projects that just won't, it's those stories that just won't let you go. So stories just keep thinking about. And like, there's something there, you know, and sometimes you're not even sure what it is. You're just like, yeah, you know, like, ooh, there's something there. There's something there. Yeah. And you keep waiting for somebody to hit it. And it's never hit. You're looking for somebody to scratch the itch that you have, but nobody scratches it. and you can't scratch it because you're not quite sure what it is yet, but then eventually it happens. Okay, I'll put it this way. When I was writing columns for the Globe, sometimes as a columnist, so you're something happens on the Red Sox beat, but you were writing a different column that day. And it's a big story, but you weren't there. It's a big story. So you read the coverage and you say, and you see all the coverage, you hear people talking about it on the radio, but there's something that they're just not saying. There's something on your mind. There's a view that you have and you just don't feel like it's been represented. And so then you write a column on it. And I used to say, I feel as a columnist, I'm going to fill that hole. I fill holes as a column, like a running back, you know, there's a hole right there. And I take it. But in a book writing is similar, but just on a larger scale. I'm going to give you an example. 2008 or 2009. And this is when I was thinking about the Patriots. By the way, how old were you guys in 2008?
10.
When you were my son's age, my middle son's age. No, but in 2008, you know, something was happening with the Patriots. Tom Brady's hurt. Matt Castle's their quarterback. They go 11-5. They don't make the playoffs. And then after that year, it was like a string of activity. Richard Seymour is traded. Teddy Bruschi retires. Mike Vrabel is traded. Rodney Harrison retires. Like, all these people are gone. And it's like this new era of Patriots coming in. So I said, okay, that's one thing. I said, that's something. Something's going on here. then then the question was like, how do you restock this? How do you keep this going? How do you connect it? Brady is going to be coming back, but he's going to be coming back to a different leadership. Willie McGinnis is long gone. Willie McGinnis was in Cleveland, then he retired. And so it was like Brady has to take a different role. This is before Gronk got there, before Devin McCourty. It was almost like this transition point. So I was thinking, all right, there's a transition story there, but that's not really what I want to say. What I want to say is I want to do something on acquisition, like how do you acquire players? Like, what is that like? But then I said, okay, that's just boring. I love the draft, but I need a draft story. I need a draft story with a heartbeat. I wrote that down. I wrote down draft story, heartbeat. 2009, I wrote that. Just that note. So all of 2009, I go back to that note like 3 or 4 times in a year. You got a draft story with the heartbeat? Nope. Okay. 2010, early 2010, you have a draft story with the heartbeat? No. And one day I was just talking to Scott Pioli, and he was in Kansas City. He was trying to turn Kansas City around. And he was very close with Thomas Dimitrov, who was the general manager in Atlanta. I said, there we go. That's a draft story. I want to do a draft story. He's trying to acquire talent. He's trying to turn around a franchise in Kansas City. Thomas is trying to turn around a franchise in Atlanta. Bill Belichick is trying to maintain a link to a championship franchise in New England. Boom! That book that became War Room. But I was sitting on that for like almost 2 years. But then it's kind of, you can't rush it. And so that's why, like with the Celtics book, that was not supposed to be a big 3 book, but it just wasn't ready to be the book that I tried to put it into a box. I'm like, I'm trying to shove this thing in here. I'm gonna get this book out. No, you just gotta wait for it. You gotta wait for the right time. But I love talking to people anyway. So to your other point of staying in touch with people, you just kind of see them around, make a phone call. And it's good to call people. Here's a tip. It's good to call people when you don't need anything. Like I'm not calling you to do this. I'm not going to ask you for money. I'm never going to ask you for money. I'm not going to ask you for money. I'm not asking you to show up at this event. I'm just calling to check in on you. Something caught my eye. You were on my mind. And I call in, I'll call and talk. I'll get information. Sometimes that I don't write. It's not necessarily breaking news, but it's just interesting. So I'll just hold on to interesting pieces of information, and then something will happen that will connect this little random piece of information to something else. If it's pretty interesting, it's a column. If it's wildly interesting, it's a book.
I like that. Pretty interesting. It's a column. Wildly interesting. It's a book. How about it? So I want to just touch on a couple more things. I know you, like you said, you got to bide your time the right way. We got to get this regimented schedule.
Oh, we're good. No, we're doing good. We're doing well, man. I'm looking at my we're good.
So in your day-to-day now, when you get like the idea to when you hear something and you write something maybe for NBC Sports Boston or wherever else you may want to write something, how often do you get the kind of itch to write something and like quick, like a column, and how often do you hold it? Like, does that happen a lot where you come across some sort of information and you're like, oh, I should write about that, and then you just you aren't able to at that moment?
Yeah,
touched on in the show.
Yeah, but the shows, the show, those are like, but writing the column and doing the show is the difference between the United States and Holland. I mean, they're just like, it's different. It's just completely different. It's different. Like the show that I always look at it this way. I always tell people, and I look at it in terms of windows. So a window on TV is about like this. Here's your window. You've got just an X amount of time to get that point out. and then move it on, kick it to somebody else. Window and radio is like this.
Right.
It's just relaxed. It's relaxed. It's conversational. And so you're going all sorts of places. You're bringing people in. It's a community conversation. It's just chill. But a column, it's TV is never going to take away. I said it on TV, therefore I can't write it. That never happens. You said it on TV, but you didn't give it the depth that a column will. You said it on radio, but that's more of a transcript because that's a conversation. But you didn't really take your time to focus it and to get it out and to deliver it. So it's fine. The itch to write is always there, but I got to tell you, it is. I don't know about you guys. I think you guys write fast, and I don't think. I'm not saying that because I don't think you write well. You both write very well, but you guys write fast. I can tell. I don't write fast. I'm slow. I'm a slow writer. And so I got to tell you, and this is supposed to be a compliment. People will say, "Man, I loved your book. I read it in a day." I go, "Oh." I know, don't tell me that. You read it in a day. Just say 3 days. Say 3 days.
Right.
Because it's like, it doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like it because it's not supposed to. I don't want it to be hard to read. It's not supposed to be. But part of the work is to make it easier to read. So a lot of times when I told you about that rough draft in the Celtics book, a lot of times I'll say, "Man, that's clunky. That just like that sentence is too serious for what I'm saying. Okay, let me just cut that down." Or that's not the right word. Shorter word, more accessible. So I'll make it more accessible because here's another tip for. It's not just young writers; it's all writers. Okay. I'm gonna hurt look, if I hurt your feelings on this, not you, but if you listen to this, I hurt your feelings. It's said with love and we'll make up eventually. You'll get over what I'm saying right now. I don't have to tell you, my ego is not such that I have to prove to you that I know big words. So I'm not going to use big words just so you know that I know them. As a matter of fact, a big word will come to mind, and I'll try to find a word that means the same thing, but is shorter and fits with the sentence. And if a big word comes up, it's because maybe that's what's necessary at the time. But I had an editor tell me when I was probably like 19, I was an intern in Akron. I was covering minor league baseball. The Canton Akron Indians. They won't be called that. Now they're the Akron Arrows. But at the time, they were the Canton Akron Indians.
Actually, now they're the Rubber Ducks.
Oh, they changed their name again?
Yep, Rubber Ducks.
That's right. So they got a beautiful stadium right in downtown Akron. But at the time, when I was covering the league, this tells you how long ago it was. The player I had just missed, Manny, who was killing it. Like Manny, the stadium was called Thurman Munson Stadium because he's from Canton. And it had these aluminum seats. And so Manny would be popping these home runs and they bounce on these aluminum seats. And it'd be like, bang! He'd be hitting these shots out to the aluminum seats. And he was just like he does now, like he did when it was the Red Sox. He'd hit it, just kind of stand there and like trot around the bases. But Manny, I just missed Manny, but the star of the league was the Eastern League. The star of the league, a guy for the New Britain Red Sox named Jeff Bagwell. He was dope. He was skinny. Third baseman, couldn't get him out. He was unbelievable. But When I was covering, that was my beat. They gave the end. Nobody else wanted it. I loved it. It was a great beat experience. So I'm covering minor league baseball. And I remember my first story, I was so proud of it because I was reading, I got this book on James Baldwin behind me. I love James Baldwin. So I was writing like James Baldwin. It was like, ooh, the flowing grasses in the outfield. Like, I had it. A little poetry going. And I wrote the story. And I'm sitting around waiting for the sports editor to come by. I'm like, okay. He doesn't want to tell me how great the story is around other people because he doesn't want to make them feel bad. Because he kept walking by and didn't say anything. Like, dude, I know you saw what I wrote there. Come on. And then finally, everybody left. He said, hey, what'd you think of your story? I said, man, hey, thanks for asking, man. I thought it was pretty good. He said, I thought it was horse. Yeah, you know what? What? Don't use big words. Don't use big words just for the sake of it. He said, impress me with describing big concepts with short words. I said, I get it. I get it. He was right. He called me on it because I was on one. I was on this whole ego thing. I was. And that's not really what it calls for. You know, you really, I want to communicate with people. I don't, and this is a way of life too. Like I'll take it to the extreme. Like I don't want people to know, like if I don't know people, if they don't know me, I will try to blend in. I want to see how people treat me when they don't know what I do, what I've done, who I am. So how do you treat people? How do you treat me if you just think I'm just like this a dude, just your neighbor? So I don't go around like saying, hey, I do this, I do that. I just want to see, because I think it's more interesting that way. Because you can really find out how people are by the way they talk to you if they think you don't know anything. So I gotta say, it makes me terrible. I enjoy it. I enjoy talking to people. Like when they talk to me about sports or anything, and they don't know, if I go somewhere and people don't know who I am, I'm like, oh yeah, is that right? They get it wrong a lot. Yeah, you know, I remember going on, I used to tease Dale about this. We went out to the Super Bowl one year when I was doing radio. And this is a story unto itself, but Dale and Holley go into a black barber shop in Arizona. Ooh, stop right there, right there, right there. That's perfect. Barber shop with Dale and Holley. Anyway, go to this barber shop. And this dude, he didn't know who I was. He was like, hey, you know, you go watch the Super Bowl? I said, yeah. Man, I'm rooting for those Patriots. I said, good. He didn't know where I was from. I said, why you like them? I like their coach, man, their coach. I liked him when he was coaching out in Kansas City. I said, he was? Yeah, man, he was a head coach in Kansas City. Yeah, you know, whatever. Like a lot of people don't really understand like what he's doing. I'm like, man, you don't understand who he is. He never coached in Kansas City. But it's just great. It's great just to listen, and it's a good listening exercise too. It's a psychological thing. Just how do people respond when they just think you're somehow beneath them?
Very interesting. I have one last question for you, and I want to. It's kind of like a weird question, but
it's weird. Good.
How much live sports do you watch? Like on TV or in person?
Live? Oh, live.
Good question.
No. Not live. Not much. Live?
Or so like last night, were you watching some of the championship?
I was.
What about just on a random, like tonight, you flip on any NBA games?
No, not unless it's got to be. I'm more on a story thing,
right,
than a game thing now. And I would say that for young sports writers. Sports writing is not about sports knowledge, not necessarily. Excuse me. Sports writing is about being able to diagnose a story and then tell the story in a way that is compelling. And a lot of people can't do that. If it were easy, everybody would do it. Everybody can't do it. So diagnose the story, figure out how to tell the story in a compelling way. And yeah, you do have to have some knowledge. I'm not saying be ignorant, have some knowledge, but also have a good ear for listening and be able to approach people with questions that will get them to open up in ways that maybe they haven't before. So last night, it's funny because it comes back to wasting time. Last night, so I'm watching it, rooting for my Buckeyes. Alabama goes up 7-zip, now 7-7, 14-7, 14-14. Oh, we're good. 21-14 Alabama. And then this is when I knew the game was over. Ohio State lines up for a field goal. Okay, done. You're done. You're done. It's 21-17. Nope. Then it was 28-17, 35-17, halftime. It's over. So like, why am I going to sit there? I don't have a good story. I don't have a competitive game. I got a book to write. What am I doing?
Do you think that changes though? Like your ability to just sit back and kind of enjoy a sporting event, like always thinking, all right, what story would I be able to get out of this? Does that change how you view games? I'm curious just from my perspective.
Yeah, it does. And I think, the most helpful thing for me, because I was always in that mode. I told you, like I'm an intern at 19. I'd say so from 19 to 32. So 13 years, just constantly thinking about games, thinking about the league, thinking about who I'm going to talk to. Okay, this is what I got to do. Here's a next day story. Here's a profile. Here's a column. I am always thinking for 13 straight years. But then I took a book leave to do my first book. And so I'm working on that book. It's just one topic. So it kind of gets me out of that, what's happening, what's next, because I'm working on one subject. But then after the book leave was over and the book was done, now I spent like a year away from the press box. And it was the best thing to happen to me because you can get jaded in the press box and you can start thinking about it. You can lose some of the joy and you can start thinking about it as a job. Hey, I got to do this. You're dealing with, it is a job. You're dealing with people on your job. Some you like, some you don't like, just like any other industry. But your viewers and your readers are consumed with sports. They don't understand that sometimes you're gonna have a bad day. They don't understand that. Like, what's your problem? So I think everybody, every now and then, if you've been doing it for a while, to step back, go to the game, don't use your press pass, sit, have some beers, and just really enjoy the beauty of the sport. Because I think if you spend a lot of time in the press box, you start to lose the enjoyment of what you're seeing. And now you're thinking about the business. Oh, I wonder if Kyrie's going to talk after this game. You know what I mean? You start thinking like that. Oh, he's such a jerk. But hold on. Like, I need you to see Kyrie in a different way. I need you to see Bill Belichick, what he's been able to do, as opposed to, if I ask Belichick this question, he's going to give me that long stare and he's going to try to embarrass me. You need to step back from that and just see it from the fans' perspective, because I think it will make you better. And honestly, you guys, we went to the Red Sox game with the class, and we talked about it in class. Remember being in there, being in the press box, how quiet it was.
Yeah.
And you got to tell our audience, man, it's funny. They'll sit the BU students up in the top row of the press box. So a couple of the students said, they could sit in the top of the press box. They could see down on the reporters, dudes like not paying attention to the game, FaceTiming with somebody.
Yeah, on the computer.
Looking at some sites that maybe they shouldn't be looking at. But yeah, I just think, you spend that much time on a job and you kind of lose perspective. So I think it's critical just to keep your perspective and to keep your joy. And then if you take it that time away and then go back and it's still not hitting for you, I think it's probably time to do something else. It ain't supposed to be a Supreme Court justice job. You're not supposed to die on it if you're not enjoying it. No, if you love it and you can bring something to it, keep doing it. But like the worst thing, there's nothing worse than a bitter sports writer.
Nothing worse. That's awesome. Well, Professor Michael Holley, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. It was good to kind of tap into your knowledge. Obviously, we've done that in a lot of different ways, but this is a new medium for us to do it. So thanks so much, and we really appreciate it.
Hey, look, man, I want to say before we go, I think you guys are going to take over. I think you two and this generation of sports writer, sportscaster is just well positioned. Like you're in a great space just because of what's available to you. Like this. Like you just you decided, okay, if ESPN doesn't want to give me a podcast, or Peacock doesn't want to give me a podcast, I'm going to do it myself. And you just did it. If you want to write, you can write. If you want to, like social media, so you have a lot more tools available to you to do what you want to do. And more than that, I think the times that we're in, where professional athletes are finally being covered in a way that they've always been, but we've usually ignored. I don't know who came up with, hey, keep sports over here and keep culture over here. But that's not the way to do it. You don't really, we got to cover whole people. And I think that's the trend now. It wasn't 10 years ago, and it was barely the trend 5 years ago. Like, I would love if somebody really, if we were in that space, we lost Bob Gibson last year, the great Bob Gibson, the St. Louis Cardinals. Bob Gibson in 1968 is, got an ERA of just over 1. Think about that. I know it was a higher amount, but his ERA was just over 1. And he's a strikeout king, and he's intimidating people in a state and in a city that was hostile to Black people. So he's a strikeout king. 1968, the country is like just politically on fire, and sometimes literally on fire. And that's the same year Martin Luther King was murdered at the beginning of the season. You mean to tell me like Bob Gibson doesn't have something to say about that?
Yeah.
A guy who had a lot of opinions, and on the mound, he could release his rage on the mound, and everybody was like, oh yeah, that's great. But if he spoke a word about the political condition in this country, or the condition of Black people in the country, people would say, well, why are you talking about that? Stick to sports. That's ridiculous. He's somebody who is going through the same things as people watching the game. And I'm not saying focus on that and ignore everything else. I'm saying you got to make that a part of the story too. And so you guys get that. A couple of generations before you didn't get it. My generation is just starting to get it. So you guys, I can't wait to see what kind of innovations that you're going to bring to this industry.
Well, thank you so much. This has been great.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. It was a lot of fun.